Good morning. What a lovely morning again. Sun is shining. It's another day of opportunity. What are you going to do today? Ah, is that your first thought when you wake up in the morning? What am I going to do today? I have a day in which to do whatever. And I hope the thoughts I've been sharing with you every day since the lockdown began have given you something to muse upon, to meditate on during the day. Or maybe it sets you off on your own pathway of adventure with God, thinking about new things or different things or rethinking things. I was talking yesterday about the fact that the Bible, this wonderful book that has sold more copies than anything else, any other book that's ever been written, this wonderful book we have, is, I called it a rule book, but that's not really right. I hope you thought in your mind, no, Marion's not right about that. It's much more like a car manual, or an anatomy book for a doctor, or the instructions for how your printer works and how to do this and that, how to connect it. It is the book that tells us everything we need to know about life and about how to live life successfully and enjoy it and be blessed. I grew up with an impression that people thought that if you were a Christian, you were living a life that involved serving a God who was a bit of a killjoy, who didn't want you to enjoy everything, because you weren't allowed to do that and this, and you weren't allowed to do that, and you weren't allowed to sleep around, and you weren't allowed to be rude to your parents, and you weren't allowed to drink as much and get drunk and go to parties and do drugs and all these. Yeah, but actually, when you think about it, all the things that that's a negative way of looking at the Christian life. The Christian life is not. It's all about warning you about what are the dangerous things to do, the things that will harm your life, that will result in sadness and difficulty, and to save you from making the mistakes that everyone else has had to make. You don't have to make the mistakes. This rule book, this guidebook, this manual written by the one who made us, shows us the pitfalls of life and the difficulties. Now, there are some of us who don't like to use a manual. I'm married to one. Terry, he'd much rather try to put together a piece of furniture that comes flat packed rather than read the manual and try and work out what it means with all those funny pictures in it and everything. Maybe that you're like that, but when it all goes wrong, you then go back to the manual to find out what you've done wrong and how to correct it. And maybe it's a good idea to go to the manual first. But I was thinking about one thing that is an important guideline and that is something to think about, which is that also life around us, the world that God made, is full of examples that teach us things about God and about how things work and how God made things to work. And that actually the things in the spiritual life work by some of the same rules that ordinary life does. For example, sowing seeds. I'm not a great gardener. I've tried. Not a great gardener. I usually start with little plug plants, but there are those who grow from seed. So ask a silly question. So if I want to grow tomato plants, what sort of seeds do I plant? If I want to grow green beans, what packet of seeds do I buy? Green beans. There. I plant green beans. I get green beans, hopefully, at the end of the season. I plant tomatoes. I get tomatoes. I'd be rather foolish if I planted green beans and expected to get carrots. That'd be rather strange, unless there was a mix-up in the packaging plant, or my friend gave me the wrong bag of seeds from the harvest of his last year. No, we plant what we expect to see grow. And that's true in our lives. And yet we don't realise it. We don't see that what we sow is what we reap. I mean, we see it in nature, but we don't translate it into our spiritual lives. If I sow worry, what will I get? Worry. If I spend my life filling my mind and my heart and my life with worry and anxiety and fear, what will I reap? Worry, anxiety and fear. If I want faith, what do I need to plant? I need to plant faith. Words of faith from the Bible. Words that tell me that God is going to look after me. Words that tell me I don't need to be anxious. I don't need to be afraid. I need to plant those in my life. And we're in a situation now where many of us are planting seeds of fear. We're saying, I keep hearing all these tales about all those poor people who are dying from this virus, and I'm afraid. If we think about that and we spend our day thinking about being afraid, what will we reap? Fear. It's why Jesus so often said, and God himself so often said, do not be afraid, do not fear, do not be afraid, don't worry. Jesus said, don't worry. Again, he looked at nature. He said, look at the birds. Do you think they're worrying? Come on, those of you who've got bird feeders, do the birds march up and down with little placards saying, fill the feeder, we demand to be fed. You're making us worried because it's empty. No, they don't worry. And the plants, it amazes me. After a winter that's as wet as the winter we've had, all those spring bulbs have come up. And the flowers are as beautiful as they are every other year. And how do they do that? When they've had a really rotten winter with it so wet and muddy and mucky and horrible. And yet those plants. But again, you put a daffodil bulb in the ground, you won't get a hyacinth, you'll get a daffodil. You put in the ground fear and worry, and you will grow fear and worry. You know, sometimes when you visit elderly folk in homes and you see them at rest, as it were, you can tell by the way their face is shaped what they've spent their life thinking about. You can tell whether they're grumpy people. If we spend our lives being grumpy and unpleasant and unkind and rude to people, what will we get back? What grows in our heart? If we fill our heart with resentment or upset or anger, what will come out of our heart? It will be upset and anger and resentment. What we put in is what comes out. We have to put in the good things. That lovely verse, we were thinking about it in our fellowship yesterday. Wasn't it lovely to get together yesterday afternoon? Those of us at Monkshard who were able to have no anxiety about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, let your requests be made known to God. And then it says, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honourable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is gracious, if there's any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Put in gratitude, appreciation, joy, living for others, caring for others. Put those things in. Think about those. Think about the good things, the true things, the lovely things, the generous things, the wonderful things. Think about the good things, not the bad things. Fix your eyes on the good and plant the right seeds in your life. Good thought for the day, hey? What are you planting in your life? What are the things you spend the most time doing? What are you planting? Be careful, because what you plant is what you're going to reap. I'll see you tomorrow. Look forward to it.